Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Francisca. If you're new here, you are welcome to this channel. I share sewing and craft tutorials. In today's video, I'll be showing you how to make this beautiful corset that you can see here. We're going to be drafting the pattern using a bra cup and we're going to be sewing it up together. If you're new to this channel, welcome. Please click the subscribe button. Click the bell so you get updates when I post new videos because you don't want to miss any of my videos. And let's get right into the tutorial. I've drafted my basic bodice pattern. Here is the shoulder line, my bust line, under bust, and my waistline. We are going to use this now to create the bodice of the corset. And in order to do this, we are going to need our bra cup. I have this bra cup here. My bust size is 37, but I got like a size lower than that. I don't want to get a size bigger, so it is not too big because the next size will be 38. What I'm going to do next now is to come to my center front. I'm going to be marking 1 inch from the center front, which is this folded part that you can see here. From that point, I'm going to mark 1 inch, and I'm going to mark that 1 inch all the way down. And then I join the points like so. So I'm going to place the bra cup like this, sort of slanted. And please go ahead and measure from your shoulder, following the bra cup. Okay? Check what you have. So what I have here is 14.5 inches. And my under bust measurement is 13.5. So it means I have to bring my bra cup up a little bit by about 1 inch. So just place it like this and check. So if I measure from the top line now all the way to this point, I'm having 13.5 inches. I don't know if you can see that. I have 13.5 inches, and that's my own under bust measurement. Once it is placed like that, I need to make sure that the bra cup is slanted because I prefer it that way. So just go on and check. Make sure this part is at this line where you marked the 1 inch from the center front. Once I've clarified this now, I will just make dotted lines around the bra cup. So I just, cupped the bra cup a bit so that it is not so much spread out. So just cup it a bit like this, and then I retrace. So just like this. Okay, I'll go ahead and trace out the new bra cup line like this. So once I do this now, I'll be connecting from this point here to my bust line to sort of like create like an armhole shape. So can you see what I'm doing? Like that, okay? And then what I'm going to do is to add a 1/4 inch here for joining of our fabric to the bra cup. This bra cup has like a 1/4 inch allowance for you to sew. So that's why I'm adding 1/4 inch here. Okay, so I'll just go on to add that all around like this. Then I extend the 1 inch to this point here. So did you see that? So once we have sketched this out now, I will go on to cut this pattern out like this. Can you see? Follow the seam allowance here, come right down here, and then cut this out. So after cutting out my front pattern, this is what I have. The 1 inch that I have marked at the center front area, I went on to divide it into 2. So I have 1/2 inch on both sides. The 1/2 inch closer to the edge is the seam allowance that we use to join the front part together, and right here the other half is the real center front. So I'm going to fold that front pattern by 1/2 inch so that we don't get confused. Okay, so I fold it in, and that is our real center front. Do you understand? So I've labeled this part my side seam. I have a side seam allowance of 1 inch. So from the center front now, I'm going to be marking my bust span, which is nipple to nipple measurement. And for me, it is 3.5. So I'll come right here and mark 3.5. And then on both sides of the 3.5, I'm going to mark 1/2 inch here, half inch here because I gave 1 inch for that allowance. Okay. I'll come right here on the under bust line that I marked initially. 3.5 is at this point, okay? So I'm going to mark the beginning of my tape rule, and then I form a straight line like this. So what I'm going to do is to connect my dots like this. So I'm going to take this now and use this to cut out the back pattern. So what I'm going to do first is to mark my zipper allowance of 1 inch. I'm marking it in both places so I can have a straight line. I'll go on to join the points like so. The next thing I'm going to do is to place the front pattern on this back pattern that we're trying to draft. So I placed the center front, that folded part now, I placed it on the zipper allowance line like so. Okay, and then I mark the top part of the center front. That is where my zipper will kind of stop. If you want to go down by 1 inch, that is definitely up to you. That's if you want your back to be lower. The next thing I'm going to do is to come to my side seam area. Where the front side seam stops at the top, I'm going to mark that point. Then I'll go on to trace the side seam of the back using the side seam area of the front. So I'm just going to trace it like so. And the next thing I'm going to do is to join that point here, okay, to the mark that we have done at the zipper allowance area with a slight curve. And I'll be using my pattern master, my mini pattern master for this. So once I've done this now, what I'm going to do next is to mark my darts. My bust span is 7. 7 divided by 2 is 3.5. So I marked it at the bottom. I'll come right at the top and mark the same thing. So on either side of the 3.5 that I have at the bottom, I'm going to mark half an inch on both sides. And then I'll be joining the points together to form my darts. Okay, so the 3.5 inch at the top, I'll join it to the 3.5 inch at the bottom to have a straight line. And then I will join the other points to the top to form my darts. You realize that the 3.5 inch that I marked is from the zipper allowance line, not from the edge of the paper. So once I'm done with this now, I'll go ahead and cut my back pattern out. So guys, I've gone ahead to cut out my pattern on fabric. I cut out 2 pieces for the back. I cut out 2 pieces for the front because we're still going to join this front back together by half an inch. Okay, that's why I cut out 2 pieces. So what I'm going to do is to keep this aside, and then we're going to be creating the fabric that we'll use to cover the bra cup. Okay, so just cut a piece of fabric that can cover the bra cup like this. What I'm going to do now is to draw a straight line. So once you do that, come somewhere, just mark, another straight line across. So you're going to be having like a cross like this. From this end of the bra cup, I'll just place my tape rule like this. Measure around the fullness. So I have about 9 inches here, but what I'm going to mark on this line will be 10 inches, okay, so that I don't get short of fabric somehow. So I place 5 in the middle here, can you see? And then I mark the beginning of the tape rule, I mark the end of the tape rule like this. So what I'm going to do next is to mark half an inch on both sides of this line. At where we just marked the 10 inch, I mark half an inch above, half an inch below. Okay, I come right here, I do the same thing, mark half an inch above, half an inch below. I'll get my curved ruler now, so I place it like this. Then the half inch that I marked here, I'll connect it to where these lines meet, where they intersect. So I'll go on to connect it like this. Can you see what I'm doing? I'll connect this part as well, like this, as if we're creating a dart. Okay, I'll do the same thing here. And then I'll come right here and repeat the same thing. Okay, so you're going to have like a curve here, and you're going to have another curve here. The next thing I'm going to do is to cut it out like this. Before I go ahead and sew these 2 pieces together, I will need to replicate this cut on another piece of fabric. So guys, I've replicated it on another fabric. So I replicated this one on Ankara. I replicated this one on plain black fabric. I'll go on to join them. I notched where I have these lines. I notched it on both this fabric and this one's under, so that I'll be able to match it when I'm sewing. And then I'll place it like this on top of each other. So you can go on to sew yours by 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch. I will also place this one like this and sew by 1/4 inch. I'll be sewing by 1/4 inch for mine. So after sewing both of them, I'll go on to notch close to the seam like this, and then I'll be pressing the seam open so the fabric can rest well on the bra cup. Each one like this is for one bra cup. The next one we're going to do is to work on placement of these fabrics on the bra cup. Okay, this one will be on the outside. So you need to make sure that whatever distance you are placing from here to the seam that you have on the fabric should be the same thing for the other cup, so that it will align well. It will not look funny when you sew it and wear it. Okay, what I'm going to do is to measure from this point here to where the seam is going to be. So on this area, I'll be marking 2 inches. So I'll mark it on the inside as well. So I mark 2 inches. On this area, I'll be marking 1.5. I'll mark 1.5 on the inside as well. I'll do the same thing for the other cup. So once I have both cups marked, what I'm going to do now is to go ahead and place this piece of fabric, this Ankara and the black fabric, and make sure that the seam matches this 1.5 inch, that I marked here. Right here I marked 2 inches, right here I marked 1.5 inch. So I'm going to match the seam of the fabric, and then I'm going to place this one on top like this. Okay, match the seam as well. So you can place it together, match the seams, and then place it where we marked the 1.5 inch, where we have this mark right here. So I'll place it there, and then I'll pin it down. Then I'll come to this side. I'll match the seam as well to this 2 inch that we marked here. So I just, let the fabric rest nicely on it, and then I match the seam to the mark that we made here, and then I pin down like this. So what I'm going to do is to take this to my sewing machine and sew the top of the bra cup by 1/4 inch allowance all the way around. So guys, after sewing, this is what I have. Just a quick advice: after you have sewn the top of your cup, don't cover your cup like this and then sew your two fabrics together. Okay, I will advise that you sew your lining first, and in order to sew the lining part of the cup, push your cup outwards like this. Okay, and then pull the fabric and sew. If you do this and you sew, by the time you turn your cup inside, you're going to have, enough room for your boobs to sit inside the cup. Okay, and then once you sew it like this, for this other side, push the cup out and then sew. Do you understand? After sewing, guys, this is what my bra cup looks like. This is what I have. So make sure that you have at least this side matching, okay, or very close, and equally this part as well. What I'm going to do now is to grab the bodies that I've cut out. I'll go ahead and sew the darts at the points where I notched. Okay, so I'll take this to my sewing machine, sew for both the front and the back pieces, and then we can proceed. So guys, this is what I have. I just arranged this for you guys to see. Okay, what I've done here after sewing the darts, was to join the front pieces together by a 1/2 inch. I sewed the darts for the back piece as well, and I joined the back piece to the front piece by a 1 inch seam allowance. I did the same thing for the other back piece as well, sewed the darts and joined it to the front piece by a 1 inch seam allowance. So what I'm going to do right now is to go on to sew the cup, the bra cup, to this part of the corset bodice by a 1/4 inch. So I'm just going to place it like this, and I'll be sewing all around the cup, attaching it to this part right here. I'll repeat the same thing for this one as well. So guys, I've sewn the bra cup onto the bodice of the corset, as you can see. I've also attached zipper to this. So what I'm going to do right now is to fix on some bias tape here, because I'm going to be inserting a boning. I actually want this corset to hold well, so I have a 1/2 inch bias tape here. I will stitch the side here, so that my 1/4 inch boning can enter into that. So I'll just go ahead and cut the amount that I need. I'll be cutting bias tapes for where I have my darts at the front. I'm not going to cut bias tape for the side seam yet. I'll go ahead and cut bias tape for the back darts. The reason why I'm not going to cut bias tape for the side seam yet is because I want to test for fit. Do you understand? So if I need to do any adjustments still to get this fitted, I will do it from the side seam. So I'll cut for the cup part of this bodice as well, so that we can insert boning in there. Okay, so I'll go ahead and place it like this, and then I cut. So for this cup part, I'll be needing 2 pieces, one for each bra cup. So I have the ones for the bra cup here. I'll go ahead and cut more for the other parts that I mentioned. Now that I'm done cutting, I'll take this to my sewing machine now and stitch all the places that I've cut the bias tape for, with the exception of my side seam. So guys, I've done for this part of the bra cup, and I inserted boning into it as well, so that the cup will come out very well and it will sit well on my body. What I want to quickly mention is that when you sew this bias tape on, this part that is under the cup, insert the boning first. Do you understand? Insert the boning first, and then you will go on to sew this bias under the cup, this particular one here, this curved one here. You go on to sew that one. The reason why I'm saying this is such that your boning can get, into this bias. You don't have any like breaking points where this bias meets this one. So everything will just, flow into each other. And I put boning here because it brought out the cup. If you look at this one, now this one is looking particularly flat, while this one is looking a bit raised. And that's what I'm going to do for this other part as well. Sew the bias on this part first, insert my boning, and then I'm going to sew on the curved bias on this part. So at this point here, the bias will be stitched on top of the boning. The type of boning I'm using is Regilene boning, or polyester boning. Is the type that you can sew on without your needle breaking, okay, and it will stitch very well. So this is the result, guys. I've inserted my boning under the cup, in the middle of the bodice, this straight one that we have right here, and at the dart place at the back. Okay, so I'll go ahead and try this to test the fit and see if I need any adjustments at the side seam. Then I'll go on to make those adjustments when necessary before going on to sew a bias on top and then inserting my boning. So guys, I had to take off 1/2 inch at the side seam area in order for me to get my perfect fit. So I did it for both places. What I'm going to do is to trim off my zipper. I'll be concealing the raw edge of this part that we have here with a bias tape. Do the same thing at the center of the bodice. Use a bias tape to conceal this rough side. Repeat the same thing for this side as well, for the top here. And I'll do the same thing for the bottom. Just use a bias tape to conceal every single place that we have here. This is what my corset looks like, and it is my perfect fit. Some couple of tips that I want to mention is that when you are making a corset like this that is not going to be lined, make sure to overlock all the raw edges of your fabric. Do you understand? Make sure to overlock every single thing. And another tip is, you can see that I still have the raw edges of, you know, the cup right here. One tip I want to give is, before you go on to attach your cup to this part of the corset bodice, I will advise that you pipe the under of the bra cup. Do you understand? Pipe the under of the bra cup to help conceal the raw edges. And if you have overlocked this part of your bodice, that's the main material, and then you pipe the under of your cup, is going to appear much more neater. Adding boning to this would definitely help the corset to sit well. You saw my other tutorial where I made corset without boning. If you do it from scratch like that, you definitely do not need to put boning on your corset. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, kindly give us a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, turn on the bell so you get updates when I post new videos, and I'll be seeing you in my next tutorial. Bye!